Hello, and welcome to The Confident Commit, the podcast for anyone who wants to join the conversation on how to deliver software better and faster.
If you're looking to build a trusted ship, tune in, let's confidently commit.
You're listening to a bonus series all about AI and building AI-enabled products. I'm your host, Rob Zuber, CTO of CircleCI, the leader for all things CI/CD. And today, I'm joined by our very own Kira Muehlbauer and Ryan Hamilton, two engineers who worked on building a feature that we recently launched, which is the AI Error Summarizer. And today we want to talk about what it's like to build AI-enabled product, what these folks learned all along the way, and a whole bunch of other things that we think folks will be super interested in. I'm really excited to have this conversation. So first of all, thanks for joining me.
Good to be here.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. I'm very excited. I'm excited to learn. So just first to kick it off, do you want to give a couple minutes or seconds, whatever you prefer, each on just, I'll start with Ryan on your role here at CircleCI and what you did with respect to this project?
Sure. Name's Ryan Hamilton. Here on the buyer experience team, product experiences here at CircleCI. Got pulled into, this generative AI project kind of during the discovery phase. Generative AI is obviously extremely popular in the world right now, and everybody and every company is pretty much talking about it. Got pulled into the project, and it's kind of been an amazing ride since. Kind of working on generative AI, it clearly represents some of the best technology I've ever dealt with. And, I was there in second grade, watching the kind of advent of personal computing. Then I saw internet. Then there was like mobile internet. Of course, we've seen, version control, and then DevOps, and then, microservices and containerized microservices and, crypto. And now this kind of brings us to generative AI, which is clearly some of the best technology I've ever seen, ever dealt with. And, the second grader in me kind of geeks out every time I think about like working on this stuff. Is clearly the best technology I've ever seen in my life. So, yeah.
I love that. And I love the spirit of exploration. I think that goes through all of that, like recognizing those big shifts and sort of then having the opportunity to jump on this one. So, Kira, why don't you do the same, a little bit about just what you do here and how you got to this place?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Kira Muehlbauer. I'm a senior software engineer on the monitoring team now. Similar to Ryan, got asked to participate in the AI Tiger team. So we spent, a couple of weeks just like absorbing information, exploring, seeing what we could do. And that all kind of culminated in us launching the AI Error Summarizer. So it was a lot of fun. It was a very different, I think, working process than we're used to, because with sprints and Scrum and all that kind of thing, it was a little bit different, but it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. So
awesome. And I will say, like, one example or expression that I keep using as I talk to folks about generative AI, and it's meant mostly to be self-deprecating, but also realistic, is like, my CTO just told me, I don't know what AI is, but we need some of it in our product as quickly as possible. Like, that feels like the vibe in the community right now. Mm-hmm. And this, this sort of working group Project Tiger team is not super far off of that, which is, we need to understand what the opportunities are, what the tech would even be that's involved. And then from a product perspective, is there something that we could, that we could take advantage of? Is there an interesting problem that we could solve that's actually relevant for our users, right? That people will find value in. So maybe let's start with you on this one, Kira. Can you tell a little bit about that process? Like from, oh, okay, I would love to work on this, and I'm really excited about the enthusiasm, but wait a second, we don't know what any of this is. We don't know what it would look like to build something into a product. Like, what was the journey like a little bit in sort of going through that?
Yeah, so I would say, we spent, what was it, like 6 or 7 weeks, I think, on the AI team. The first week, I want to say, was just kind of reading, watching videos, finding all of the information that we could, just to see kind of what's out there, what's possible, what are other companies doing right now. From there, we actually ended up booking meetings with almost every PM in the company, just to kind of get a sense of what are the big challenges that you're facing right now. Like, even if don't think about AI, I don't want you to think about AI when you're answering this question. Like, what are the challenges that your team is facing that you don't really have a solution for? And we got a chance to, talk to so many PMs and get a whole bunch of different perspectives from areas of the company that we're not usually involved in. So it was great. It gave us a whole lot of perspective and a ton of ideas. I think we ended up with 75 things on our Trello board dump of ideas that we could build. So yeah.
Yeah, well, one thing that you called out in there actually that I think is really interesting is really getting outside of your area. And I definitely want to focus on AI overall, but just the notion of working on a quick experimental project and using that to go really understand the rest of the business, all the other areas we might be working. What are the biggest concerns of our PMs? I guess I'll turn it to you, Ryan. Outside of AI specifically, is there something that you took away from that was, particularly valuable? Is it a thing that you would want to do more often, really understanding kind of the bigger problems of the organization in that way?
Absolutely. And I think kind of in starting the whole kind of generative AI discovery process, we realized we had to learn kind of a lot of different things. There's a lot of different things to learn within the field. There's, NLP and AI and ML. And, it's kind of like you can deep dive into and become a PhD in any aspect of this stuff. But to your point, I think, and Kira, I hope you would agree, kind of talking to the project managers across the company early on in the discovery phase, that was probably, some of the most rewarding work. I would probably, if I had to do it all over again, probably spend kind of much more time diving and kind of digging into the product brains around the company to kind of pick their brains and to unpack that a little bit, to wait and to kind of provide foundation for all the rest of the learning that we were to do during that project. And I would also say kind of looking at the values of the company, at large, kind of looking at, the core values of, transparency and, kind of all the core values of the company, and kind of layer on top of that deep, comprehensive talks with all of the best product minds around the company. I definitely think doing much more of that sooner probably would have been the best practice for me personally, as opposed to getting way down rabbit holes into NLP and I don't know, all the complexities of vector databases. You could really kind of drown in all the technical complexities of the stuff, but really what should have grounded me much more if I had to do it all over again is really kind of a deeper focus on those core values and certainly comprehensive talks with the product team.
Yeah, I mean, many people are listening to this just as audio, so maybe didn't see Kira sort of emphatically nodding along with that. I think it's a really interesting takeaway. Focus on the product, focus on the product problems, the big problems, and really dive deep into that, which independent of any Tiger team, I would always advise understand more about that in your whole organization. It's an awesome outcome. Is there anything else from you, Kira, that as a, if you were going to do it again, as a key learning that you would maybe, folks listening to this who are sort of diving into this maybe for the first time, you would advise approaching differently, or, you would do differently if you had another chance?
I'm not sure about doing things differently, but I think honestly the most valuable part of this whole exercise was just that we were essentially given free rein.
Yes.
When we were pulled onto this project, they were okay, we don't know if we're going to put AI in the product or not. We're here to figure out if we should and what that should look like. And, we're going to have, I think we had a check-in midweek every week, but otherwise it was a lot of okay, go out, go learn, find out what's out there, form your own opinions, come back to us. And not having the constraint of I guess approaching it without a goal in mind kind of enabled us to go way beyond, learn so much, right, and just, explore.
And to have fun with it.
Well, it's okay for work to be fun. I think I've said that on this podcast before. But as a leader, I find that really interesting because, and for any leaders that are listening, there's a tendency to say, oh, I've seen this before. Like, let me share with you a little bit of my experience, a little bit of my advice, and maybe overextend that and not give people room to grow. So maybe what's really interesting about this particular space is that none of us have a clue at the moment. And so we're all learning together. And it's like, it just feels like a much more collaborative exercise that's been forced on us. Like, that would be best practice in all environments, right? Giving people room to grow and explore and learn with some guidance or constraints or whatever that might be. And that, sure, there's some constraints, but it's hard. It's hard for people who have a ton of experience to give others as much space as you got in this. And so it's like an interesting side effect of the particular space and the time and the rate of change in this environment that it's like, come back and tell me what you learned, because I don't know that either. And then we can work together on, okay, what would we want to know now? Where do we think the opportunities are? Is there anything that, like, I mean, I'm sure you're paying attention to the space still, like, you went on sort of a rocket ship ride through learning to get to where you got to, but, constantly thinking about it. Are there things that you've maybe learned since then that have changed your perspective, or things that you're really sort of noticing shift now as you see more and more people putting out AI-enabled products?
I think kind of on a personal level, like what I've seen since the project, and kind of to revisit the previous question in your point, is that regardless of how much we learned during that Tiger team, during that generative AI, kind of discovery phase, there's still so much yet to learn. Like, I'm still so humbled by it all. Like, it was very humbling to even approach, and start on the Tiger team and start that discovery phase, and to learn and deep dive into, the product and to the customer and to the, the technical complexities. That, like, regardless of how much we all learned, there's still so much humility that's kind of left here within me. Is like, oh my God, there's so much yet to learn. There's still so much we don't know about, what's coming next. And, but I think, to answer your question, what I've seen since, kind of being on that team is on a personal level, to your point about, like, the adoption and seeing, every tech company has to kind of, wrestle with this stuff and to figure out how does generative AI fit into, my company and my product and to our services. The little delightful things that I've seen kind of just in living my life has been pretty amazing to watch. I don't know, I was on Amazon the other day. I just bought a new MacBook Pro personally for myself, and I wanted to kind of back up all my data. So looking for an external drive, and so I was on Amazon. You know how you're kind of vetting different products, and you're looking at 4 to 5 star ratings, and I want to read all the reviews for this thing. Amazon has this new thing where you can kind of go down there and it'll summarize the reviews, all thousands of whatever reviews that they have on whatever external hard drive that I was looking for. And oh wow, they just summarized and saved a bunch of my personal time. Love that. So on Spotify, you can with one click of a button get a almost like a personalized DJ or radio station, specifically catered to me with this DJX that they've got. And, Duolingo's using and kind of baking it into their experience, and making language acquisition and language learning, ever so much better for me. So I think what I've seen since kind of CircleCI's own discovery phase is that kind of realizing and understanding that every other tech company is in the same exact boat. And, we're kind of there to serve them and enable them through our tools and our platform, so that, the great logos and brands of the world, like, Amazon and Spotify and Duolingo and all these different names, are wrestling with it and making great products even better. That's kind of been a fascinating thing to watch.
That's awesome. Kira, anything that you've really noticed, I guess, internally or externally, since?
Yeah, I guess kind of just to echo Ryan's point, like, AI is everywhere. Like, it's kind of crazy. This is the first time, I think, in my admittedly short career that, like, my non-tech friends know what I'm talking about. Like, generally, everyone is talking about, like, ChatGPT and, like, these new, like, AI features, everywhere, like Figma. It's all over the place. And most of the time, I have a little bit of a hard time kind of explaining to my non-technical friends, like, what do I do for work? But now I'm like, oh yeah, well, we built this thing that sends an error to an LLM and it summarizes the error for them and they understand that. And that's kind of crazy. Just, I don't know, it like a year ago, maybe ChatGPT came out, and it feels just like since then it's been nonstop.
Yeah, we're coming up on the 1 year mark. And yeah, a way that I often describe it is it feels like there's a foundational technology here that is extremely complex, but for the first time in a long time, we took something that complex and wrapped it in something that anybody could understand, right? Like LLM, deep learning, neural networks, like the rabbit holes that you talked about, your non-technical friends probably don't understand that, but they know that if they type something into a text box, they can get back a text answer that they can totally, it's just plain English. They don't need to understand APIs and programming and all this other stuff, right? And so that not only blew everyone's mind, but it gave them a chance to experiment with it and see value in it, right? Like if someone explains the blockchain to you, you're like, okay, but what would you do with that, right? Versus this is what this looks like. This is what it's like to interact with it. And I think that is a very, very cool connection that, everyone has with it and has given us this opportunity to really explore at honestly very low cost, right? Like, once you got back out of the NLP rabbit hole, I'm sure you could just say, wait a second, I just sent a thing to an LLM, get back a response. And there's like, I'm making progress.
And it was that simple and quick. And I think the coolest thing about that simplicity is that, and to speak about, understanding the product and doing this to do something for our product is that even the examples I gave earlier, like the Amazon, kind of review summarizer, it's not this like radically innovative thing. It's something like very subtle and simple that they put like way below the fold on their application. Some of the most dazzling things I've seen, in terms of feature and like product launches have been very subtle additions to pre-existing good brands that I already know and love. Didn't take, I'm sure it didn't take that much time or effort to introduce that feature, these new products. But the impact that it's made on my everyday life and the time savings that it's given me have been amazing. All that to say is like, you don't have to move mountains with this technology. You can, but you don't have to. Like for a very low investment of time and cost, like you can achieve probably a very good long tail of like customer impact and good experiences out there. You can achieve a lot with very little time. Just looking at even our error summarizer here at CircleCI, to Kira's point, we had this team for like 5, 6, 7 weeks. It was just kind of like a summertime thing. We did it and we were in there. We learned for a few weeks. Then we started coding on it. I think I learned Python in a day, like overnight. I took a Pluralsight course, and the next day I was up on LangChain, like pinging OpenAI, and had a proof of concept up within the day. I wish I had started that sooner in the discovery. I wish I had like done that, kind of tinkering earlier. But all that to say, like the cost of time just to get your API keys and start pinging this thing and using it and testing and tinkering and coming up with something. That something doesn't have to be that dramatic for it to be a really good win for you.
Yeah, I love that takeaway in there of, as soon as I start tinkering, I can see the value and the cost of the tinkering is really low, right? Mm-hmm. Like I could start to see right away, oh, here's something I could achieve. Here's something I could achieve. And to your point, doesn't need to be massive, doesn't need to be big. Like just start and like, don't start with, I'm going to train my own model. Start with how can I improve my product, right? I think that's absolutely a fundamental takeaway and great advice for someone who's getting into this and feeling overwhelmed. As we wrap up, Kira, any advice from you for folks who are like, I don't even know where to start. My CTO just told me we need AI. Like, what does that mean? Where would you get going?
Yeah, honestly, like there are so many great foundational models out there, and I feel like more and more are popping up every day. And chances are pretty good that you do not need to train your own model. There's ChatGPT, there's Llama, there's DALI, there's audio, image, video. There's so many text LLMs. Like there's so many things out there, and just start with the basics. Try prompt engineering a little bit. You can move up to like fine tuning and vector databases if necessary, but like I feel like for most people you really do not need to train your own model. Like it's kind of overkill a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, it's funny because we think this is all new and so much of it is. But at the same time, if you took the AI out of that sentiment, instead start with the simple thing, figure out what matters to your customers, get going. Like none of that is terrible advice under any circumstances. So don't get overwhelmed. That's what I'm taking out of that by all the potential. Because there is potential, but you'll figure it out as you go. Get started, learn by doing, try some things, see what's working.
Yeah.
The cost is cheap to experiment and just have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't even need, AI or ML engineers to get started. And, if you have regular software engineers, they're more than capable of, interfacing with the APIs and chaining things together. So you can get started right away.
Right. And then use that to figure out what you might need over time, but you're making investments in things that you've identified as real value. Awesome. I love all that advice. I love the stories. Thank you so much for joining me and for building this, and for learning so much and sharing all your learnings, obviously internally, but now with others. It's been a really, really fun ride to watch. And thanks to everyone for listening. If there's someone you want us to interview, talk to, any subject you want us to cover. I mean, right now we're going to be all about AI for a little bit, but find us on Twitter at CircleCI. If you enjoy the podcast, share it with your friends, subscribe on your podcast provider, distributor of choice, whatever we might call that. Anyway, thanks again for joining, and thank you, Ryan and Kira, for joining me here today.
My pleasure.
Thanks so much, Rob. Appreciate it.